Hi, welcome to my sporting show Kavindu Cricket Times. Today on the show we're going to talk about the series between Sri Lanka and Australia, and I will give my take on how well Sri Lanka have done and how lucky Australia got. So hit the like button and subscribe to my show. Now let's get started. Now Australia won the series 4-1. Now I want to clarify this. Don't be fooled by the number that says 4-1 because there's a lot more in this 4-1 margin. In fact, I will go on and say very clearly, Australia got very lucky. Australia sometimes, I would say, did not deserve to win that series. Yep, that's the reality. Australia were outplayed in many areas. So now let's get started. Let's start with the summaries. Now, in terms of the highest run scorers and stuff, I want to get those out of the way first. In terms of the top two the highest run scorer of the 5-match T20 series is Pathum Nissanka with 184 runs at an average of 36.8 with the highest score of 73. That includes two scores of 30 plus and one half century. That's the highest run scorer. Second is actually Ben McDermott, 150 odd runs. So you can see how this thing goes. In terms of bowling, you can see why I just told you that Sri Lanka kept up with Australia and why Sri Lanka deserved to win this series. Josh Hazlewood and Kane Richardson picking 8 wickets each. And then Dushmantha Chameera picking up 7 wickets in the series as well. Very impressive. Now, I did not put Mahesh Theekshana or other bowling figures because I want to focus on the best of the best in terms of the numbers. So now these are the top run scorers and the wicket takers. So let's talk about the matches, how each match went. The first T20 was for the first T20, Australia batted first and scored 149 runs for loss of 9 in their 20 overs. In that innings, Ben McDermott scored a wonderful half century and Marcus Stoinis played a quick fire 30. With the ball, Wanidhu Hasaranga picking 3 for 38 and of course Charmio Karunaratne picking 2 for 22 and Bindra Fernando bowled beautifully 4 overs 2 for 12. Now unfortunately Bindra only played one match because he missed out because of injury. One of the many reasons why Sri Lanka couldn't win the series in my personal opinion. Sri Lanka in response couldn't make it unfortunately. Only managed 122 for 8. Pathum Nissanka 36 and Dinesh Chandimal scored 25, a quick fire 25. With the bowling department, Josh Hazlewood 4 for 12 and Adam Zampa 3 for 18. In the first T20, Sri Lanka couldn't keep up with the bat, but then again, in that match, I seen the match and I watched the entire match. Sri Lanka gave their wickets away because lack of care. They were so careless, they gave their wickets away. That's why they lost, not because of bad batting. That's the reality. And in fact, many times in this series, they have been guilty of giving wickets away carelessly. Now that's the first T20 of course. In the second T20, that's when Sri Lanka should have won. But because of umpire Rod Tucker, Australia managed to win. And that's why this series is not 3-2 but 4-1. Australia batted first again, scored 164 for 6 in their 20 overs. You're thinking, ooh, very impressive from Australia. Josh Inglis 48 and Aaron Finch 25. Apart from those two, no one else really contributed. In terms of with the bowling department, Dushmantha Chameera picking up 2 for 30, Wanidhu Hasaranga picking up 2 for 33, very impressive from Hasaranga and Chameera. Then of course in Sri Lanka in response, 164 for 8. Now you might be thinking, how can Sri Lanka put themselves into a tie? Well, again, the Sri Lankan top order did not deliver. Asalanka, Dadarsha Gurutilaka, very few names to mention, did not deliver with the bat. They were out of form, didn't get runs as they should. So the responsibility fell on Pathum Nissanka and Dasun Chanaka to get Sri Lanka home. They almost got there, but once Pathum Nissanka and Dasun Chanaka went, it was harder. But then the tail wagged long enough, including Mahesh Theekshana hitting a glorious 6. In the crucial phase of the game, which of course injured Steve Smith, just so you need to know. In the second innings, Pathum Nissanka scored 73 and Dasun Chanaka 34 from 18. He was run out. That just shows you how careless Sri Lanka was. But Sri Lanka had the chance. In the last over, the second ball before the last ball, with 2 balls remaining, there was a wide. The ball was clearly a wide. Everyone knew it. Even Shane Warne in the commentary box knew it. The umpire said no. Umpire said no. At that time, we needed 5 to win from 2 balls. For God's sake, imagine that wide and the boundary in the last ball. Sri Lanka would have been 1-1 in the series at this stage. I am disappointed with umpire Rod Tucker. So the match went to super over. Then there was no other influence. Josh Hazlewood bowled a brilliant spell of fast bowling. In his super over, he only conceded 6 runs. Considered just 5 runs in his super over. As Sri Lanka tried too many dinky shots rather than trying normal cricketing shots. Again, I expect this. It's a young team. This Sri Lankan team is a very, very young team. They do lack the experience. Despite that, they got 164. Then in response, Australia won the game with 3 balls to spare in the super over by hitting 2 fours in the second and the third ball of the super over by Marcus Stoinis. And Vanidu Hasaranga went for 9 in the super over. So, this match gave Australia a 2-0 lead. Unfortunately, this should have been 1-1. Sri Lanka should have won that game. The Australian umpire, Rod Tucker, he is the reason why Sri Lanka couldn't win that match. That's the reality. Even if commentators like Shane Warne said it's a wide, for God's sake, it's a damn wide. And even the batsman didn't move either. It's sad, but it's the truth. Because of that, it's 2-2 for Australia. And then quickly let's get to the third T20 after a demoralizing effort loss. After doing everything right. After batting beautifully, and I thought they pulled back the game brilliantly with the ball in bowling in the second T20. The young team may have lost a little bit of spirit. The second T20, Sri Lanka batted first and scored 121 for 6. This time around, Dasun Chanaka 39 unbeaten, and Dinesh Chandimal again scoring 25. With the bowling department, of course, Ashtonega 1 for 14 and Kane Richardson picking up the 3 for 21. Kane Richardson. Australian response won the game in 16.5 overs. Now you might think 16.5 overs to get 122. Well, that shows that Sri Lanka bowled incredibly well. If Sri Lanka had something like 150, 140, Sri Lanka could have defended this total. Again, another missed opportunity where Australia bowled well, but they batted poorly. Again, they got lucky because they had not too much to defend, not too much to chase. Again, Australians, you are some lucky team. You are some really lucky players indeed. In the second innings, of course, Finch scored 35. Glenn Maxwell scored 39 with the bowling department. Mahesh Theekshana 3 for 24. And of course, Jeffrey Van Der Sey 1 for 32. Then of course, in the fourth T20 with now 3-0 down Sri Lanka. This time around, Sri Lanka came with a positive attitude. Danusha Gunatilaka and Pathum Nissanka put a very good stand for the first wicket. 30 odd for the first wicket. However, Danusha Gunatilaka decided that I will give my wicket away because I'm so stupid and I'm careless. He gave his wicket away. And as a result, Sri Lanka after that could not quite recover. They managed to get 139 for 8. Again, a very good score, but different surface. On this surface, you need at least 150, 160, not 130, 140. In this, of course, Pathum Nissanka scored 46. Kusal Mendis scored 27. So, very impressive from Mendis, at least a good comeback form. Then, of course, the bowling, Jai Richardson, 2 for 20 and Kane Richardson, 2 for 44. Australians took some tact. In the process, however, though, Australia managed to win the game with few overs to spare, couple of overs to spare, but again, 143 for 4. Australia, Maxwell 48, Josh Inglis fought with the bowling department, Lahiru Kumara, the big, quick, fast bowler Kumara, 2 for 22. He matched the pace of many Australian fast bowlers in this series by no problem. And Mahesh Theekshana 1 for 20. So 4-0 down, an unfortunate scenario, a situation where Sri Lanka should have been probably at this point, I don't know, 3-1, at least 2, maybe 2-1 at least at this stage, not 4-0. I mean, think about that for a second. I mean, obviously. Then, of course, the fifth T20, Australia batted first and scored 154 for 6 in their 20 overs. And in this game, Sri Lanka debuted young players Kamil Mishra and Jayanta Lianage. If I pronounce the name wrong, please pardon me. In the first innings, Australia scored 154. Matthew Wade scored explosive 43, making sure that Australia get to a score that is defendable. And Glenn Maxwell scored 29 as well. With the bowling department, Manidu Hasara. With the bowling department, Lahiru Kumara 2 for 34. Dushmantha Chamira 2 for 30. Then of course Sri Lanka. Now I want to say this. Shane Warne and the Australians said that 155 is too much for this young Sri Lankan team to chase. Well, they got their answers very much answered very quickly. Indeed, Sri Lanka chased it with just in 19.5 overs, going against the odds that people said that they can't. Kusal Mendis scoring a magnificent 69, and Dasun Chanaka 35, and hitting a glorious 6 to seal the victory for Sri Lanka. I personally witnessed it. I was so excited when that ball went for 6. I felt a sigh of relief knowing that Sri Lanka at last got a victory that they deserve. They deserve to win the second T20, but Rod Packer took that away from Sri Lanka. And then on the third T20, Sri Lanka did not bat well, did not get enough runs to defend. If that's the thing, that's the reality. So with the bowling, Kane Richardson 2 for 28, of course, and Ashton Agar 1 for 19. Now, so the summary of the series is that Australia won the series 4-1, but in reality, this series should be 3-2. And that just shows you that this Sri Lankan team, in fact, I would go extra and say, this Sri Lankan team should have won this series very much. They should have won this series 3-2, in my personal opinion. Australia did not bat well. Australia was outbatted just as Sri Lanka were. Both the teams were scratchy with the bat. None of the teams batted with their freedom. That's because both the teams were struggling with the bat. Sri Lanka, they did not struggle, but more, let's say, they gave their wickets away in the series. The way they chased in the last T20, you know they could have won the game. You know they played well in the second T20. That's the reality. And the missed opportunity in the fourth T20, well, that's all something to be said. So overall, what do I think? Is Sri Lanka cricket back on track? Yes. It's a young team, and Sri Lanka has done something that's brilliant. Sri Lanka have gone to Australia. Officially, they lost 4-1, but unofficially, in my opinion, it should be 3-2. That means Sri Lanka have gone against the odds and performed brilliantly, as they should. This young team will be the number 1 best T20 team in the world in no time. If they perform like this, they will be the best in the world. There is no question. Young players have been discovered. New talent has been found. Remember, Sri Lanka could not play Vanidhu Hasaranga, Bindra Fernando, Kusal Perera, major names in this team, just so you know. So, how will Sri Lanka do in the Indian series? I back India to win the series 2-1 or 3-0. Why? Beating India in India is very, very tough. Even Australia can't beat India in India. So, I don't have much hopes in the Indian series. But I do believe Sri Lanka will put the best effort they can. They will be competitive. If they can win one game, that's equal to winning a series. Because beating India in India is very, very, very impossible. If Sri Lanka can do that, this proves not only they have played well and technically should have been 3-2 against Australia, but then they should also done well in India. This will prove Sri Lanka is back with a bang, and these young players have rescued Sri Lanka cricket. So, thank you very much for joining me on this show. Hit the like button and subscribe to my show.